This is Jenny Kunkel, and in this video we're going to take a look at the group by. In the last video we started using our aggregate functions, and they were applying to everything in the table, or everything that had values, as we saw with our last thing. They gave us the totals for the entire table, but maybe there's a column in our table that we want to get a total for, and the way that we can do that is using a group by. Now, a group by is going to essentially introduce the group by, and then you're going to give a column separated list of fields that you want to group by, and then also have essentially a having statement if you want to do something with the results of that aggregate function and do some type of comparison with that. Then you would use the having statement. You wouldn't put it in the where condition. You would use that aggregate function comparison within a having statement and apply it there. And then that's going to go through and further eliminate the rows that are being returned. So let's take a look at an example if we go to SQL Server Management Studio. Now this is essentially where we left off. We have our department ID. We have our count of the employees that we want to get for each department from our human resources employee department history table. And we were doing this above where we were getting all of the summary counts. This time we want to do it based off of that department ID. We saw that we were getting this message that that department ID either needs to be in an aggregate function or we need to use the group by. If we add the group by for our department ID and run this, it's going to essentially summarize the data, and we can now see the number of employees that are for each of the departments. Now what happens if we want to include yet another field? We have a shift ID. What about how many employees per shift are in that department? So I can add the shift ID as well and add it to my group by. And at this point, it's going to give me the number of employees on that shift per department. So I should see that in a couple different locations. I can see that I have 1, 2. Now you'll notice it's not really sorted. And we can always go ahead and add the order by to sort it into a particular order. Maybe we want to get all of the departments in order because here we see an 8. We see an 8 down here. Let's go ahead and put it in department and shift ID order. Then I can go ahead and execute it. And now it's ordered, and I can see that I have 4 employees for department 8 on first shift, and 1 on second, and 1 on third, etc., etc. So we can see our information being summarized for the key combination of department and the shift ID. Prior to that, it was department ID only. But what happens if we are interested in looking at the results and I want to output anybody that has more than 10 employees on the shift by department? I can add a having statement before my order by and just say having, and this is going to be the count of the business entity ID, and I want to look at this where it's greater than 10. Now, why am I using a having and not a where statement? And it is all about how when we are running our query and doing that grouping, it's going to go out and accumulate the result set, get those totals all out there, and it needs to finish that. And if we apply the where statement, that doesn't necessarily happen after. That happens as it's creating that result set. So after we create our result set is when we want to apply that condition because we want the counts already there. And the having statement is going to then apply it after the counts have already been output essentially in that in-memory result set. And then it can go through and filter all that based off of whatever we put in there for the expression. And in this case, we are looking for the count greater than 10. And I can execute this and it's going to filter out, and I'm only going to see the results that are greater than that. So this is going to give us a good idea of how we can essentially put in our data here. Now, if I wanted to do start date and end date, whatever fields that we put into this have to be in the group by, and it's not always going to return to us exactly what we want, because if we want to put department name in there, then we would have to group by department name, and it gets a little messy. So this is best used when you just want the summary. There's other ways that we can get the data, and we'll take a look at those in a bit. Let's switch over to Oracle. It's going to essentially work the same way. We have our product ID, and we had our quantity that we wanted to sum up for our order items. And essentially, I can just go ahead and add my group by for my product ID. And I can execute this, and we should get totals for our product ID. I can also apply a having statement on this if I want to get something that maybe has a sum of the quantity greater than 275. If I execute this, I'm going to return less rows, and we can see those that have a quantity greater than 275. So it works essentially the same between Oracle and SQL Server. And the next thing that we are going to do is a roll-up. So let's continue on in the next video with our roll-up.